Hello everyone. Today's video covers part 3 of Solove's privacy taxonomy, information dissemination. Make sure to check out parts 1 and 2, in which I introduce the taxonomy and cover the first two groups, information collection and information processing. I will link the videos in the description below. This is going to be the longest video of the series, but I think after watching it you will have a better understanding on how to separate the different forms of attacks and violations and how they are connected. I will again link the concepts to current themes and the GDPR where appropriate. Regarding the bigger picture, this is where we are right now. We are dealing with what happens when personal data is revealed or when information is spread. The first form of information dissemination is breach of confidentiality. Solove argues that breach of confidentiality is separate from the next group, disclosure, because it also involves the violation of trust in a relationship between the data subject and the data controller. Therefore, the harm is not only that information is leaked, but also that the data subject has been betrayed. Consequently, actions to combat breach of confidentiality seek to enhance trust between the actors. One thing I always advocate for is that data holders are transparent regarding their data processing practices. But broken trust takes a long time to recover. Closely related but still separate in Solove's taxonomy is the second form of information dissemination, disclosure. Disclosure refers to leaking true information about someone. This is an interesting point, especially in the US, because one might argue that disclosing true information about a person should be protected by the First Amendment, which protects free speech. However, it can likewise be argued that the protection against disclosure protects free speech, as people feel safer to talk about sensitive topics and associate with whoever they like, if they can trust that nothing is leaked, thus granting individual autonomy. The main violation of data disclosure is the harm caused by the leaking of information, while breach of confidentiality affects the trust. Disclosure can cause damage to an individual's reputation. Moreover, leaking the address of, for example, a famous person can and did lead to security issues. The next form of information dissemination is exposure. Solove defines exposure as making something seemingly embarrassing public, such as, for example, going to the toilet or naked pictures of someone without their consent. One famous instance was the scandal about the leakage of naked pictures of female celebrities, mostly female. The most important difference to disclosure is the nature of the leaked information. While disclosure deals with true and on face value harmless information, exposure explicitly targets new information, such as how a famous actress looks naked. Clearly, people now reveal more of their skin than they did in the past, which you can have mixed feelings about, but for most people it is still an embarrassment. Therefore, exposure harms individuals through depending on the current social norms, and no one argues that it is protected by the First Amendment. The next form information dissemination can take is called increased accessibility. Remember that this taxonomy is from 2006, but even back then the trend towards digitization has already started. That means that government agencies put online information that was already freely available. While you had to go to the magistrate yourself in order to gain some information, you can now simply do it online. On face value, this seems like a great improvement over the status quo ante. The information is public, so it should be made available over the internet. However, not everything is rosy. In a now famous case, Latanya Sweeney was able to re-identify the Massachusetts governor based on linking public datasets alone. The sheer increased availability of those public records made this attack possible. It is hard to imagine going to every magistrate in the country to physically obtain copies. It is a moot point, however, everything is online now anyways. Our focus should therefore be on applying strong privacy mechanisms such as k-anonymity, which was developed by Latanya Sweeney, and differential privacy to public datasets. The next form is blackmail, which most of you are probably familiar with if you watched any of my cyber attack videos. Nowadays, it takes the form of a double extortion attack. The victim's computers are encrypted and also data is stolen. If the ransom is not paid, the data is leaked. For companies, this can mean that business secrets are revealed. For individuals, this is obviously a different ballpark and therefore similar to exposure, especially in the context of, for example, leaked naked pictures, or in this case, eating disorders. Blackmail is different than exposure, as the violation is not the exposure of the, for example, nude pictures, but the abuse of the power dynamic that arose by stealing information. Blackmail thus prevents the exposure if the victim does what the perpetrator wants. The next form is called appropriation. Solove uses this term to describe the act of using someone's name or likeness, for example a picture, for a purpose not permitted. The definition is that appropriation is the use of one's identity or personality for the purposes and goals of another. An associated term is exploitation. A famous legal case from 1902 was the usage of a woman's face or head for a flower commercial. As there was no damage, the courts ruled that no violation has been committed. This caused a huge outrage. Why was this considered to be a problem? The picture is nice enough, there were no slurs or other text that would damage her reputation in any way. It is in fact difficult to express why there is some kind of damage that occurred by using your picture without your consent for a seemingly positive message. An easy out is to reduce it to property rights. Your face is your property and you have a right that it is not used in any way that you don't want it to be used. Also, Solove argues, taking someone's likeness for advertising purposes is an interference with freedom and self-development. As one judge argues, the use of one's likeness for advertising purposes can bring even the individual of ordinary sensibility to a realization that his liberty has been taken away from him. One can intuitively tell that this is true. Just think about actual famous people. They consider usually very carefully which products they endorse and as they become associated with them, and vice versa. Think about the Friends episode in which Joey's face was used in connection with an STD. He, however, consented that his face is used for advertising, and it was still seen as something he doesn't want to be associated with. Following appropriation, where we deal with benign messaging associated to your face or name, distortion finally describes methods to spread false information about someone, or information that is misleading or incorrect. Something that is very current because of deepfake technology, with which we can basically make anyone say anything we want or put them into any situation we want, no matter whether it happened or not. This makes it immediately clear why distortion is a privacy violation. People have the right to be correctly portrayed in public. I don't think I need to say much more about this right now, as we all are aware of the dangers of false information, which we just called lies a couple of years ago. This also reflects Article 16 of the GDPR. The data subject shall have the right to obtain from the controller, without undue delay, the rectification of inaccurate personal data concerning him or her. So that concludes part 3 of Solove's privacy taxonomy. I see you in part 4, which closes this series with privacy invasions and a final verdict of the privacy taxonomy, as well as the impact it had and still has, especially in the academic world. If you found this video interesting and you learned something, like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a comment if anything is unclear or you have something to add. See you in the next video.